Thanks for joining us for another edition of The Small Business Show with Jim Fitzpatrick, exclusively on ASBN.com.
Hey everyone, Jim Fitzpatrick. Thanks so much for watching another edition of The Small Business Show, exclusively right here at ASBN.com and now streaming on Roku, Fire TV, and Apple TV. Today we're discussing the multiplier framework and how it can help leaders and entrepreneurs. Joining us now is CEO of the Wiseman Group, author and executive advisor, Liz Wiseman. Liz is a New York Times best-selling author, and she writes for Harvard Business Review, Fortune Magazine, and other business publications. But the pinnacle of her career is now she is with us at ASBN.com. So, Liz, thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
Hey, it is wonderful to be here with you, Jim.
Great. You had to go through all of those other, unfamiliar publications to get to ASBN.com. So
it was all a warm-up act.
That's exactly right. No, well, thank you so much for joining us. Hey, for the part of the audience out there that may be not, or I should say, not as familiar with you as we are here at the show, tell us a little bit about yourself and your entrepreneurial journey.
Well, I am a researcher. I study, I write, I teach about effective leadership in the workplace and how do we lead in ways that utilize people's full intelligence. Mm-hmm. I came to my research, and really as a academic or maybe a quasi-academic, I came to it from a 17-year career as a corporate executive. So it really shaped how I approach my work. And I think it's because I've had to do kind of the hard, gritty, dirty jobs of being a corporate leader that has caused me to ask certain questions. And I think it's brought a lot of empathy to that. But I spent 17 years working at Oracle. I joined Oracle when it was still a relatively small company, fairly unknown in the tech world. I think a lot of my friends from business school thought I had gone to work for a toothpaste manufacturer.
Oracle. Yeah, sounds like it could be one.
It does. And I helped that company grow from, a relatively small, mid-sized software company to, the
conglomerate giant it is today, right?
Yeah, it's a giant, and spent 17 years there. And when I left to go out on my own and to start a small practice. And I remember very clearly one of my friends in the corporate world, I was having lunch with him, and he was wanting to know when I was coming back to the corporate world. Like, was I done with my midlife crisis, and was I coming back to the corporate world? And he said, yeah, we miss you. He said, like, I get what you're doing, but it's like kind of being out there in this small company. It's just such a waste of your talent.
Wow. Yeah.
And I think he must have thought I was really good at, I don't know, working the system in the corporate world. And I did go out on my own, and I feel like the work that I have done as an entrepreneur, as a researcher, being part of a small business has had far greater reach and impact than I could have working in the global giant that is Oracle.
Sure. Well, that's great, and we're glad that you did. Can you provide a brief overview of the multiplier framework for our audience?
Well, some people think that Oracle was that multipliers was my post-Oracle therapy, because it's this idea that some leaders who are smart and capable and talented use their talent and intelligence in a way that amplifies or multiplies the intelligence and capability of people around them. Whereas other leaders, I call them diminishers, they're smart and capable and talented as well, but the way they use their own capability and their orientation toward their own capability ends up having a diminishing effect on people around them. And I saw these different kind of leaders at Oracle, and I wanted to really understand, why is it that some leaders amplify intelligence while others are kind of a wet blanket on good ideas and thinking and initiative and ownership and all of the kinds of things that creates brilliant work. And as I studied it, I found that these diminishing leaders, they hire smart people, but they're getting less than half of people's available intelligence, their know-how, their insight, their ideas, their skills, their capabilities. And they're causing an enormous waste.
Yeah.
inside of their organizations and creating work experiences that people say are exhausting. Like strangely, being underutilized is exhausting. Whereas people describe working for these multiplier leaders as it was tiring, but totally exhilarating.
Yeah. And that's what you want. That's what you want to hear, right?
Oh, yeah. It's when people describe these experiences working for these multiplier leaders, they're like, I gave everything that I had.
Yeah.
Like I was using every IQ point, like the good Lord gave me, and then some,
Yeah.
as I'm deeply utilized, working really hard, but they would describe it as these fulfilling, exhilarating experiences, kind of like a great workout where, I mean, you've done work, you're sweating, you're tired, but you feel like full of energy, ready to tackle other hard
Yeah,
things.
it's a good point. Very good point. So how can leaders identify whether they're acting as a multiplier or a diminisher among their teams?
Well, I'll give you a little litmus test of what we found as the 5 fundamental differences between multipliers and diminishers. But then I also want to help people think through that. We find that most of the diminishing that's happening is coming not from tyrannical, bossy, narcissistic kinds of diminishers. Most of it's coming from leaders with really good intentions.
Yeah.
Are trying really hard. So you might just start by thinking about what is it that you're doing with really good intentions that's causing other people to shut down. I guess first is, when you look at the talent in your organization, are you putting people in jobs or are you utilizing people's natural talent? Diminishers tend to put people in jobs. Multipliers use people's natural talents.
Okay.
When it comes to the work environment, is your work environment tense or is it intense? Does it have like stress that causes people to shut down or just enough pressure where people are doing their best
Sure.
thinking and their best work?
Sure.
When it comes to setting direction, do you tend to give directives and tell people what to do, or are you asking questions that help people figure out what's possible and what they can do? The fourth, maybe little litmus test here is when it comes to making decisions. And on the most important decisions, do you tend to be the decision maker or do you play the role of debate maker? Framing the issue,
Yep.
asking the question, posing the options like, well, should we pursue this market or that market? Where's the better
Right.
investment?
Right.
And then letting people weigh in and leading a hard-hitting debate. And lastly, when it comes to getting things done, are you micromanaging and are you getting things across the finish line? Or are you enabling, if not insisting, that other people get it across the finish line?
Very interesting. So what challenges do leaders commonly face when trying to apply the multiplier framework, and how can they overcome them?
Well, I think the first I hinted at, which is most of the diminishing, over 2/3 of it that we find in the workplace is coming from what I call the accidental diminisher. And a lot of things that feel like good leadership actually causes other people to shut down. In some ways, leaders aren't necessarily doing anything intimidating. They're just playing so big that other people end up playing small around them. Like
Good
leaders
point.
who are fountain of ideas, that they're constantly popping off ideas, thinking they're starting brainstorming, that other people are going to follow suit, but other people just take those ideas and run with it and don't do any deep thinking. Or leaders who are big-hearted, who end up rescuing people who are struggling to get something across the finish line. They extend a hand of help. But we know what happens when a leader or parent, is helpful too early or too often,
Sure.
that people weakened around them, not
Yep.
stronger.
That's right.
Or leaders who are really optimistic, just positive can-do kinds of leaders who don't realize that they're not creating room for people to make mistakes, or they're so convinced it's going to go well that they don't see the struggle it takes to get to victory. Another challenge that a leader might have is they say, okay, for me to be like the multiplier leader, I need to put my focus on people around me. And so they play small, like they're quiet. They don't say anything in meetings. They don't want to take up too much space. They don't interfere. And, being a multiplier leader is not about being small so that other people can be big. It's about playing at your best, but doing it in a way that enables other people to play at their best as well.
Right. Liz, I think I'm a diminisher.
Well, I'm pretty sure.
The way that you're describing this, I'm putting my, my wife and I own 5 different companies, and I think my team, who's now in the control room looking at me strangely, but they will tell you that when I get into a conference room and I've got an agenda and I want to share ideas, and I think I'm shutting everybody down, or that may be bringing ideas to the table, because it becomes the Jim show rather than the team.
And I think I am very similarly, like I see a lot of these multiplier characteristics in me, but I also see a few of these diminisher characteristics, and most of them are things that I and you do with the very best of intentions. And again, it's not like you want to go into that conference room and go quiet. Like there's value that you bring that only you can bring, but it's learning to moderate our capabilities. Like, the best leaders aren't small, they're not timid, they're not shy with an opinion, but they know how to dispense their own intelligence and capability and vision in small but intense doses.
Yes.
Like when they come in big, but they also know how to roll back and play small and create room for other people to play big.
Right. And listen more than they speak, right, to the team, to some degree.
Yeah, and I think it's one of the challenges of people who have a lot of ideas, who are quick thinkers, who are maybe blessed with the gift of gab.
Yep.
To shift that ratio.
Oh, I'm telling you, it's just from a personal experience. It's very difficult. And especially if you're running a busy operation, as many people are, and they've got an agenda or they want to get things done. But at the same time, you want to cultivate this team approach towards projects, but it doesn't always come out that way, And I find myself in the middle of meetings where it's like, hey, let's go around the room and get everybody's input here. What do you have to say? And it's, we're good. Yeah, we're on board. And I'm not getting that interaction because I don't think that they trust me enough to say, okay, we really want to, I'm really going to tell you how we feel about this, but you might not take it well, or you might do your own program anyway.
And Jim, it might have nothing to do with trust and everything just to do with preparation. I'm going to tell you one of the things that really changed in how I led once I did this research. I love real-time conversations. I love nothing more than someone says, hey, what do you think about this? And, gives you a real-time problem. I think some of that was my Oracle training, being called on the carpet, like by Larry Ellison. And you're like, okay, I got to come up with it. One of the things I realized is that people's best thinking usually isn't done rapid fire real time. Like the best arguments tend to be done that way, but not necessarily the best thinking. So I started sending out agendas for meetings a couple days in advance. Here's what we're going to cover.
Good idea.
Here are the things I want you to come in with ideas on. And more than just sending a list of topics, I learned to send a list of questions. Here are the questions I would love to have your thinking on. Should we do this? What's the best way for us to solve this? And if you give people some time to come ready,
right,
when you then ask people to weigh in, they're ready to go.
They're not shooting from the hip to come up with something. They've given it some real thought.
And I think it's maybe if you've got some extroverted tendencies, it's realizing that people who maybe are more introverted, more thoughtful, quiet, brilliant, when they open their mouth, they want to have something substantial, evidence-based to say.
Exactly. Wow. Liz Wiseman, CEO of Wiseman Group. I could talk to you all day about this. In fact, we'd love to bring you back because I've got about 7 more questions I'd love to ask you about this very topic. And of course, the book. For those of you that are out there, there's a link right under this video for you to click and get the book, which I highly recommend you do. Thank you so much, Liz, for joining us on the show. We very much appreciate it. And as I said, we'd love to do a follow-up with you and get some more of this knowledge from you that's much needed in the entrepreneurial community.
Well, it would be an honor to do that, and it's been a delight to talk with you.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us for another edition of The Small Business Show with Jim Fitzpatrick, exclusively on ASBN.com.